Alrighty, hello. Welcome to another prediction video. This time not on the 2020 election, unlike all the ones previously, but it is the end of 2020. It is New Year's Eve for me right now, and I figured why not have one last prediction, but this time we're trying it out for 2024, just kind of for fun, because I think it'd be pretty funny if I managed to actually predict anything, honestly, that far in the future, even though it'd be totally luck. So here we are on the 2024 Electoral College map. This time instead of the 2021, there's a couple of electoral vote changes here and there. For instance, Texas is 41 instead of 38, and Colorado's changed, and there's a couple of them, but it doesn't make too much difference. But here we are. I've added most of the states which aren't really considered swing states. Of course, there's places like New Hampshire, Minnesota, Ohio, which some people would probably consider swing states, but realistically, looking at the margins of 2020, I think it's pretty reasonable to put them where they are on this map here. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, when you're trying to predict 2024, which is so far in the future, obviously it's not even much of a prediction because it's much more of a it's just much more of like a guess, because you're going to be basing, as I will be, basing so many of your choices on assumptions, basically, because it's, so hard to consider all these variables which are going to go into an election, which is 4 years from now. The economy, or what happens in the midterms, or if aliens invade, or whatever. It's kind of impossible to predict. So we're going to be going off a lot of assumptions, I think. So my assumptions are basically going to be this. First of all, I believe, regardless of what happens in Georgia on the 6th, I believe that's when the elections are, I believe that whether it's through Georgia special elections or through the midterms 2022, that the 2024 will have not a super majority for the Democrats. So they will either not control the House or not control the Senate, or both. So what does that mean? That basically means they won't be able to pass very much. And that's not good news for them, because that means they won't really be able to get much done. And usually it's a lot easier to attack a government that doesn't do very much. Because typically when you're doing stuff, it's more easy to have people look at it and be like, okay, I agree with that, as opposed to being, attacking when it's people not doing something. I'm not sure if that made any sense. But anyways, I also am going to assume that the economy is probably rebounding and it's getting a bit better after the coronavirus pandemic. The coronavirus itself has probably went away, or at least it's not as big of an issue. Not as big of an issue. And yeah, I think that's probably my assumptions, and I think they're reasonable. Obviously, I can't predict everything, but the bigger thing is probably who is going to be actually running. And in my opinion, I think I can confidently say one of them will be Kamala Harris. Why is that? Well, I simply think Joe Biden is probably going to either step down and give the presidency to Kamala Harris, or he will not run and she will win the Democratic primary, because I don't think anyone in the Democratic field could primary her realistically. Bernie's not going to run again, or, I don't really see any challenge against Kamala there. Okay, so we figured out Kamala is probably on the one side, but who is for the GOP? And honestly, I don't really know, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to be Donald Trump. He said he wants to run again, and he's obviously going to win. Like, I don't know who would beat him. Maybe some people are like, oh, Nikki Haley can beat Donald Trump. No, they couldn't. No, she couldn't. Maybe it's Mike Pence. Either way, it's some Trump Republican, like a Republican with his brand, kind of populist-ish, the way he ran in 2016, 2020. But yeah, so I think it'll be, let's just assume right now, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, who's going to win. So let's get into the map. We'll start off in the East Coast, how about? Maine 2nd District went pretty strongly for the the Republicans, and this last election, and I got that one wrong in my prediction, so I'm going to keep it as a just a lean for the Republicans probably. I'm going to skip over the Rust Belt for now because I think that's going to be a bit more important. I'm going to leave that for a little bit. I'll go down to Florida. Florida, I think, is going to stay Republican, which obviously will be breaking its trend of voting for incumbents. But I think after this last election, it's hard to see a comeback from Joe Biden when Florida went to the GOP for so much. Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong, but that's my guess. Go back over to the West, or head over to the West Coast. I'm going to try to kind of get the ones where I'm more confident out of the way first. For instance, Nevada, I think it'll be, Democrat. And I'll go to the more interesting ones last. So over here, I'll do Nebraska 2nd District. I think this one will probably go to the Democrats. I don't really know much about it, but just considering how much it went for this election, sure, why not? Same with Michigan. I think Michigan has went strongly enough for the Democrats where it should still hold. We've seen that it has what it thinks about Trump when it going for Joe Biden, who realistically is a pretty boring candidate by 3.5% or whatever it was, 3%, or maybe I think it was 2.5%. So I think it'll stay Democrat. And then we have, I'll go over to Wisconsin. This is the first flip. I think Wisconsin will probably go to the Republicans. Considering that it went by such a slim margin in 2020, I think it'll be quite easy for the Democrats to lose there. Quite easier for the Republicans to flip it, in so much that it is a state that is trending towards the Republican Party. So I could definitely see Wisconsin heading over to the Republican column. I'm going to move down to Arizona next. Arizona, I think, is trending in the direction of the Democrats. Maricopa County is not showing any signs of stopping in its growth to become more and more Democratic. And I think the Republicans are going to see this state becoming the next New Mexico or Colorado in the next decade or so, and it's probably another lost one, which is unfortunate for them because, as you see, they've gained electoral vote. Yeah. All right, now we got 4 left: Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. And honestly, I think all of these could be probably considered toss-ups, especially toss-ups if it makes sense. But I'm gonna start with Pennsylvania, and I'm gonna explain my thought process on Pennsylvania because people might disagree with me. But I think it will probably go to the Republicans, and here's why. If you are a Republican looking at this map, or at least the 2020 map, you're going to be thinking, how can we flip? Which states can we flip? Which are the most likely to flip for us? Where can we target to make sure we win this next election? And I think Pennsylvania will be at the top of that list. It's 20 electoral votes, which is, that's in Illinois right there. And if they want to win, they probably need to, and not only want to win this election, but if they want to have a sturdy chance at even, getting the Democrats to be competitive with them, because they're really, when it comes to demographics, they're losing. They need to flip the Rust Belt, and that's going to happen with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And I think if they're smart, they will attack the Rust Belt as much as possible. When I say attack, I mean focus on it as much as possible in order to attempt to win it, because this area of the country is trending Republican. And if they can basically create a new stronghold of this, what once used to be a Democratic stronghold, I think it was called the Blue Wall, with, it happened with Ohio already when, and Iowa, in I think the 2000 election was fairly liberal, or at least it voted for Gore. Ohio was, relatively a swing state. They need to shift this part of the country to the right as the Southwest and the Southeast is shifting to the left, or at least towards the Democrats. So if they're smart, they need to attack these places because that's where they're going to need to make up those votes if they want to win. So that's why I think Pennsylvania is going to go that way. They're really going to focus on it, and I think they could definitely win there. Also, I guess if Joe Biden isn't running, he won't have that hometown, I'm not sure what it's called, but no longer is Pennsylvania voting for someone from their state, so that could be a bit of a disadvantage for Harris. So maybe I think, Pennsylvania will be Republican. Now next up, probably North Carolina. I think it'll still stay Republican. Why? I don't know. I just consider North Carolina Republican in my mind, and it voted for Romney it's still like, I voted for Cal Cunningham, or sorry, I voted for Tom Tillis against Cal Cunningham, which implies that they still have very strong ties to establishment Republicans, and it might have been Cal Cunningham's fault, but I see it being very close, but probably not yet. The Republicans definitely need to hang on to this fund, and they will probably focus on it, because if they lose North Carolina, that's 16 electoral votes, which is huge. That's like Michigan or almost Pennsylvania. So I think they'll definitely hold on to that one. And the last two states, which are very, very interesting, and as you can see, they do kind of decide the fate of who wins. Georgia, I think, is gonna probably go to the Democrats. Hard to say, because I didn't predict this happening in 2020, so I was surprised to see it go over to the Democrats, but I guess since it is trending in that direction, and I think that if you're Kamala Harris, or at least her campaign team, she's going to be thinking, I need to hang on to Georgia, because that basically balances out North Carolina or Ohio. And if the Republicans take it, if we take a look here, there's like nothing standing in their way of easily winning the election, since all I have over Clinton 2016 is Arizona and Michigan. So if she wins there, she actually does win the election. So I think it'd be very, very smart of her to be like, we need to focus on Georgia and make sure we keep that victory that we had over Trump there in 2020 in order to win the election as a whole. And finally, we have Texas, which I think is by far the most interesting state. We saw it go to Trump this time for about 6 or 7% or something like that, maybe 5%. I can't really remember. It was closer than 2016, and we're seeing it slowly get closer and closer to being competitive, or at least a flip for the Democrats. So what is going to happen in Texas? Now, I could play it safe and just be like, oh, well, I don't think the Republicans or I don't think the Democrats will flip it. But you know what? Why not? Let's kind of do a more risky prediction, I guess. But I think it'd be funny if it pays off. I think the Democrats will win Texas, and I'll explain why. So far, I've been talking about how the Republicans are thinking about how can we overcome what went wrong in 2020. And they're thinking, well, we need to reinforce the Rust Belt, and we need to win back there. Maybe they may end up winning Michigan. And we need to, hold on to places like North Carolina, Florida, and if they're lucky or whatever, they maybe win Georgia. But if you're a Democrat and you're trying to put yourself in the mind of the Republicans, so we're kind of like 2 layers of inside the mind, 2 layers deep so far. The Democrats are thinking, we need to counter the Republicans, because chances are they're going to win places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin due to demographic shifts. What can we do to put them on the defensive? Because right now, going into 2024, the Democrats will be on the defensive side, the Republicans will be on the offensive side. What can we do to have a counteroffensive effectively, and basically get the Republicans to kind of panic, or maybe not necessarily panic, but really put on the pressure using probably one of their key states, which is Texas, against them? And I think that with Kamala Harris running, she would maybe, I'm not sure if it would be the most likely pick, but I think if I had to guess right now, she would pick Beto O'Rourke to run with her as her running mate in order to flip Texas, because Texas is such a crucial state in this election. And if you win Texas, you don't need to worry about Michigan, you don't need to worry about Georgia. Do you even need to? No, you don't even need to worry about Arizona. So it would be an incredible feat for them to basically flip Texas, and from there, not only, this is very important, not only are you doing yourself a huge favor with winning the election with Texas, with what would be considered maybe a landslide, maybe a little bit less than a landslide, a decisive victory, 314 to 224. You would also be creating something very important for the future of the Democratic Party, and that is what I talked about earlier. With the Republicans now probably making this blue wall from 20 years ago in the northeast part of the country into a more Republican stronghold, the Democrats have to respond with the new blue wall. And where's the new blue wall? Well, it's pretty clear to see. It's the West and the Southwest. And I think if they can make this new blue wall, which is basically stretching from Texas to Washington, they're going to be kind of not undefeatable, but they're going to be in a very, very good position going into 2030, going into the 2030s, going into the 2040s, because this part of the country is growing very quickly. It is becoming the economic heart of the country, so to speak, or at least the Democrats will control the economic heart of the country with the Northeast, as well as Texas and California and Arizona. And from there, you don't need to worry about places like these, more rural, effectively, states, or at least with more rural population growth, less urban population growth in the Northeast. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and even Minnesota could probably flip. And eventually, if you're looking really far in the future, it's probably going to be places like Illinois that will flip, as well as maybe New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, not Massachusetts probably, but these more older, I hesitate to use that word, but the places which are not gaining residents as quickly, you need to effectively make this new blue wall in this very important part of the country. And I think winning Texas will do that for them. And they already did part of it in, I believe, 2008 with Colorado and New Mexico, then Nevada, and then they did a bit of it in 2020 with Arizona. And I think the last piece of the puzzle, the most important one, is of course Texas with its over 40 electoral votes. And this would be pretty much unstoppable. I don't know how the Republicans would somehow beat that, aside from maybe winning every other swing state in the country. But in any case, alrighty, so I'll head back to my actual prediction in quotes, because realistically it's not really a prediction, more of a educated guess, but I think it'll be something like this. Or at least I think it'd be pretty interesting if it was something like this. And maybe if I get really lucky, I'll be right, and I can pretend that I'm really smart because I've managed to predict it 4 years early. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Just one kind of fun thought experiment. Really, it's not based on facts or anything. Just what could be interesting and could be fun to see in the coming years. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching any of my predictions that I did in this last year. I don't know if I'll do any more now that there's no other elections really, but in any case, thanks for watching, and goodbye.